And we're live. All right, it's often said that California weather is boring, and that certainly can be true throughout much of the spring and the summer, but today is certainly not one of those days. As you can see in Northern California, we've got a winter weather advisory in place. We're going to see how much snow we could be getting with that throughout the Sierras. We've got some high wind warnings going on in some of our major cities with gusts up to 40 to 60 miles per hour. We've got a red flag warning in place. There's the possibility of thunderstorms. And then we're also going to be diving into the drought and any threats for wildfire. So certainly a lot to talk about today. The best place to start is always just by looking at the current conditions, taking a snapshot of what California actually looks like right now. So the first two things I notice here, one, that marine layer still in effect over parts of Southern California. That's been going on for what seems like the last 4 or 5 days, but I would say that's actually a good thing because it adds some good moisture to our fuels, reduces any wildfire threat, especially when you think about those high winds that are going to be down in SoCal over the next couple days. Now the second thing I noticed, and clearly the bigger thing to talk about on this map, is what's already going on in Northern California here. You can see some of those clouds dropping in, and it actually looks better on the infrared imagery, where you can see that this is actually a storm system first starting to come into California. Now, if we want to actually see where that storm is coming from, it's coming from up here in Washington and Oregon, and over the next 3 days, this is what's going to be driving the weather in California. Today and Friday, you see that low continue to drop farther into California, and that's what's really driving our weather. It's going to be doing a few different things. One, you can see how it's actually going to be bringing these cooler temperatures down, but it's also going to be bringing that snow into the Sierras, and then is also what's bringing those high winds to some of our large cities. So this is, I would say, a pretty anomalous type of system. To see a low this big move into California in May is, I would say, rather rare. So you can see that's sticking around all the way through Saturday into Sunday, and then it looks like it's finally gone on Monday. So this is going to be what's driving our weather over the next few days. First thing that it's going to be driving is our temperatures. Like I said, as that low drops down, it's going to be bringing some cool conditions with it, and you can actually already see those cool conditions moving into Northern California. Where you have the blue color, that means you're below average temperatures. You can see some spots up in NorCal and the Sierras already looking 5 to 10 degrees below average. Now, what you will realize, though, is it takes a little while for this low to drop all the way down into Southern California. It doesn't really get down there until maybe Saturday or Sunday. So you can see there's parts of Southern California that are actually still above average. And that comes into play when you start to think about the red flag warning, because we still have some warm conditions, especially in the southeastern parts of the state. Now, as that low continues to drop down, you see that it has a major impact on the temperatures. As we get into Friday afternoon, that's where all of California is looking like below average temperatures, with some spots in the southern Sierras here getting 25 to 30 degrees below average for this time of the year. So that is why we've got the great possibility of some snowfall moving into California. But before we get into any of the precipitation or the snowfall or the thunderstorms, let's just actually look at what the temperatures themselves will be doing over the next 3 days. So if we go into just the highs for this afternoon, you can see how much we've cooled down. Redding, you're 67. Chico, your high today is going to be 71. Sacramento, 74. Santa Rosa, 65. So as we saw on the temperature anomaly map, as that low comes down, it's bringing some cool conditions with it. Much of the Sacramento Valley just in the low to mid 70s, which is about 10 to 15 degrees cooler than we have been for what seems like the last month. The other thing I notice here is that blue color in the Sierras. Where you have that blue color, that means you're below 32 degrees. So that's where if you get some precipitation, it can fall in the form of snow. Then let's just check out the high temperatures for tomorrow. You can see it looks like a little bit of a warm up in Sacramento Valley, but we're still below average temperatures. And what's good to see is that parts of the North Bay, really aren't that warm either. Just in the low 70s in places like Santa Rosa and Napa. And that's actually going to be some good news because there is the chance for some thunderstorms there. And when we look at the wind map, you can see there's some high winds as well. So now let's get into what I know you've probably been waiting for throughout this entire forecast. What kind of rain, what kind of snow are we going to be getting? What are our totals going to be with this system as it comes through? Because I'll be honest with you, I was not expecting any more big storms throughout the course of this year. I thought winter was completely over, but as you can see, that is not true as we have that winter weather advisory in effect. So we were actually already starting to get some of that light rain and snowfall in very northern parts of the California as early as last night, and you can see that actually continuing right now. So let's go back to that infrared imagery. You can see some of these storms already in northern California, and that is actually showing up on the precipitation map as well. Some of that light snow building into NorCal, that's going to continue throughout the day, just scattered throughout northern California. There's no places where it looks like it's real heavy snowfall or heavy rainfall, but as we saw as that low drops down, it's going to be over us for a number of days. So this is now getting into Friday at 5 p.m., still picking up rain in northern California, still picking up heavier snowfall down in the southern Sierras where we saw those 25 to 30 degree below average temperatures. So overall, I'd say not really any heavy rain or heavy snow, but it's falling all the way through Saturday, even into Sunday, and then it looks like it's gone, maybe even some light rain as late as Monday afternoon into even Tuesday morning. We're still getting some of the last lingering effects of this, maybe even into midweek next week, still getting some light rain in the very northern parts of the state. So that's why some of our totals are actually going to be pretty good with this storm. Not heavy, but falling for a long period of time. So let's look at some of the accumulations. This will be our rainfall map. We'll look at the snowfall one in a second here. You can see when it comes to rainfall, it's not too impressive. We're not seeing 5 to 10 inches, which we'd certainly like to see when it comes to the drought, but considering that we weren't really expecting to have any more large storms, we'll certainly take whatever we can get at this point in the year. So if you look at some of these accumulations, that green color is where you're 0.1 to 0.3 inches. Where you get into that blue color is where you could be getting over a half an inch of rain. Now, what I'm really excited about is the snowfall that's going to be coming in, because the Sierras only received about 70% of the snowfall that we typically get in a year. And the snowpack right now, if you actually look at the Sierras, there's not a whole lot of white color in the Sierras right now. Our snowpack is much lower than it should be this time of year, and that's important because we rely on that snowpack to slowly melt throughout spring and summer to, one, replenish some of our water resources, but two, to bring some much needed moisture to our vegetation to reduce the wildfire threat. So I'm certainly hoping for some great snowfall with this storm. And the great news is it seems like every time we've checked these models throughout the week, it just keeps giving us more and more snow with this storm. So this is the most recent model run. This is just clicking all the way through the storm to see what kind of totals we can get. And you can see it's looking pretty good, especially for this time of year, and especially considering some of the earliest forecast model runs, which were just showing 1 to 2 inches of snow. Now the forecast is showing, where you see that purple color, up to 6 to 10 inches of snow. There's widespread areas that are in that blue color, which represent 1 to 5 inches. But what I'm really excited about is that purple color there, getting over 6 inches of snow this late into May is certainly not normal. And it makes sense because that low pressure system moving into California, causing all this snowfall, is, I would say, not normal. So we do have a winter weather advisory in effect. I guess that is one thing I should say. I'm excited about this storm because I'm mostly thinking about the drought and wildfire and just our water resources, but this is something to keep in mind. Anytime there's a warning in place, that means you do have to watch out when you're driving, reduce visibility, winter conditions, even though we're this late into springtime. So that is something to think about. So in the forecast, it's widespread areas getting 1 to 4 inches of snow, but there are some spots getting up to 6 to 8 inches. So overall, I would say pretty good snowstorm for this time of the year. I'm certainly going to be interested to follow this storm as it comes in to actually see what kinds of totals we get. And who knows, with the way the models have been trending, we might end up getting even more snowfall than they're even saying right now. Now, the other thing you see on this map here is the possibility of some thunderstorms coming in. Most likely time frame talking about 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. this afternoon. But if we actually look at the forecast models, it looks like there's even a better chance of some thunderstorms coming in tomorrow afternoon. So just clicking into this afternoon, you can see some of those thunderstorms popping up in Northern California. Overall, I'd say not widespread, and they're not really looking all that strong. If we look at tomorrow afternoon, though, much more widespread chance of thunderstorms, and some of these look like they could be packing a little bit more of a punch. In parts of the North Bay, like Napa and Sonoma, I believe there's a 50% chance of you guys getting some of those thunderstorms, so that's certainly something that I'm going to be watching all day today to see if we end up getting those. And whenever you have thunderstorms, again, that's where you could get some small accumulating hail, some brief heavy downpours, gusty winds, and the possibility of some lightning as well. So when I think about thunderstorms, big things I'm thinking about are the lightning and the winds, and the combination that could have on some kind of wildfire threat. We certainly saw that last year when the lightning kicked off a lot of those fires up and down the state, where we had like 500 fires start all at the same time. So the key thing I'm thinking about is parts of the North Bay, because I saw the possibility of thunderstorms, possibility of lightning, and high winds. So if we actually click through the next 2 days, you can see that there are going to be some very high winds throughout the North Bay. Some of those gusts, if we click in here, getting up to 40, possibly maybe even 45, 50 miles an hour. And if you look at the warnings map, we do have one high wind warning up here in Northern California. So that all seems like relatively bad news, and you can see some of those high northerly winds up in the Sacramento Valley as well. But here is where the good news comes in. One, if you look at the direction these winds are coming from, they're coming from the coast. So that's able to actually push in some moisture that we wouldn't be getting if it was blowing offshore. So where you get those winds mostly coming from the northwest, that's where your humidities can get up into the 50% range, which brings some moisture back into your fuels and reduces some of the wildfire threat. Also, we've had that great marine layer over the last 4 to 5 days. So if you look at the fuel moistures around the Bay Area, it's no longer in that bright red kind of scary category. If you look really closely, we're just in the orange right there, which means our fuels have a little bit more moisture than we were seeing 2 to 3 weeks ago. So I would say that is at least encouraging, because it's not as bad as it certainly could be this time of year, especially considering some of the warm temps and the dry air that we have been having over the last month. The last few days has been good, so that reduced the wildfire threat in the North Bay. Now, with that being said, the drought model updates every Thursday, and I checked it this morning, and that's certainly not some good news for parts of the Bay Area and the North Bay, as we have now moved into the exceptional drought category. That's, if you don't know, the worst category that you can have on the drought map, and we're not even into summertime yet. So I'm going to keep showing this every single Thursday for sure, most likely even more than that, but every time this map updates, we'll take a look at it, and overall, it looks like the area that's in that extreme drought category and the exceptional drought category just keeps extending every time we look at it. So that's also why I'm so excited to see some of that great snowfall moving into the Sierras. It's not going to be enough to really put a dent in the drought, but certainly moving in the right direction, and is better than the alternative, which would just be completely dry conditions. So now let's follow this low pressure system as it moves down into Southern California. As you can see on this map, it moves into Northern California first, and then that's where the strongest effects will be felt. But eventually, as we get into Saturday and Sunday, it does move over the entire state of California and Nevada, so we will have some effects down in Southern California as well. Now, the first thing I'd say is when it comes to the temperatures, like I said, it moves into NorCal first. So right now we can see we're below average temperatures, but parts of SoCal are actually still above average. So that's why there's parts of SoCal that actually have that red flag warning in place throughout the day today. But if we keep clicking through this map, eventually that low works its way over the entire state, and that's where much of Southern California is actually going to be looking cooler than NorCal, with some of your temperatures 25 to 30 degrees below average throughout Friday and then into Saturday and then into Sunday as well, as you saw that low sticking around. Then towards the start of next week, we're going to transition back into some warmer conditions. So let's look at the temperatures themselves. If we look at the high temperatures for today, you can see we are a bit cooler than we were at the start of this week. Bakersfield, your high today, just in the mid-70s. Los Angeles, your 69. San Diego, 61. And parts of the desert in the mid-80s. So parts of the desert still a bit above average, but you can see as we go into Friday afternoon, that's where we really start to cool down. Parts of the San Joaquin Valley just in the low to mid-70s. Los Angeles and parts of the coast still right around 70 degrees, but then if you look in the desert, that's where we start to cool down back into the mid-70s. Now, when it comes to temperatures, I don't really think that's the big part of the story. The other part I don't think is a big part of the story for Southern California is any chance of rainfall or snow. You can see we are going to be getting some snow in the very southern Sierras, but it's certainly not looking as good as Northern California. Just some possibility of some light rain throughout places like Los Angeles and Oceanside as we get into Friday morning, but it's certainly not as widespread, and it's certainly not lasting as long as we were seeing in Northern California. The big story in Southern California, I think, is just the gusty northwest winds. It says all week, strongest through Thursday, and there's the possibility of some 40 to 60 mile per hour gusts. So where you get strong winds, that's where you get some dangerous sea conditions, elevated fire weather concerns, hazardous driving, down trees and branches, and some power outages possible. So let's actually take a look at some of these winds because it's even strong already. This is before this storm has really even moved into the region, and you can see we already have some of these strong winds. Clicking in here, you can see we're already up to 40, 50 miles per hour, and typically morning is the time where you don't have strong winds. Strongest winds will be getting into this afternoon, especially in the southeastern parts of the state. Remember, that's where we had the above average temperatures, but we also have some wind gusts over 55 miles per hour. So it makes sense that we have that red flag warning in place in the southeastern parts of the state. Now remember, we also have high wind warnings throughout much of Southern California. So you can see why that's taking place as well. If we go clicking into places like Los Angeles, we do have some gusts up to 25, 35 miles per hour. And then the other thing I notice on this map are the sundowner winds over here in Santa Barbara. So for those of you who don't know, this was actually originally going to be my master's thesis, looking at the sundowner winds in Santa Barbara. And it's a very interesting weather phenomena, because when you get northwesterly or northerly winds over the San Ynez Mountains, when it drops down into Santa Barbara, the air rapidly heats up and dries out, so it can get your afternoon high temperatures in Santa Barbara about 5 to 20 degrees warmer than they otherwise would have been. And that's also where you can get some threat for wildfire. Now, the good news is we have had some great marine layer over the last few days, and you can actually still see some of that marine layer going on over Los Angeles right now. That should actually deepen and increase as that low pressure system moves in. But what I love about the marine layer is it brings some great moisture to our fuels. You can see right around Southern California, we are no longer in that bright red color. We've now transitioned into that green and yellow color, which means our fuels have a bit more moisture than they did before. So that reduces your wildfire threat when thinking about some of these extreme winds. The other reason that I'm not as worried about wildfire threat in Southern California is the direction that these winds are coming from. So you see, especially moving into Los Angeles here, they're coming from the ocean. So you think about what that does. It takes these cool, moist conditions and pushes it into Southern California, and you might even be able to see that if we look at the humidity map here. Exactly. So you can see those onshore winds push that humidity into some of our coastal areas and even farther inland. The opposite of that is where we get those Santa Anas, where it's taking the warm, dry conditions in parts of the valley and the desert, and then blowing those into much of this region with those Santa Ana winds. That's where we get the real wildfire threat. When the winds are coming from the coast, certainly not as scary. So just one last look at the widespread winds. We'll just click through and see what they're going to be doing over the next couple days. You can see, especially picking up in our afternoons, Thursday afternoon, Friday afternoon, seem to be the windiest times, again with some gusts getting up to 40 to 60 miles per hour. So with that being said, throughout much of Southern California, we have high wind advisories, high wind warnings in place, and where we have those above average temperatures, even a red flag warning in place. Again, in the Northern California, we have that winter weather advisory with widespread snowfall of 1 to 2 inches possible, but we do have some locations in that purple color there possibly picking up 6 to 8 inches of snow. That's certainly what I'm the most excited about. That's going to help with our snowpack. That could help with some of our water supply, some of the moistures in our fuels, and the drought and wildfire in general. So great to see this storm coming in. We're going to take another look at it tomorrow because it seems like every time the models update, they just keep giving us more and more snow. So I'll be very interested to check out these weather forecast models tomorrow to see if it continues to look this good. So with that being said, anytime there are warnings in place, you do have to err on the side of caution. We've got all this snow moving in, some thunderstorms as well, so be sure to stay updated with your local resources. So I hope everybody has a great day, and thank you for watching.